Alright guys, we have a fun one for you today. We are going to be talking about the use of testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, and other anabolic agents in penis enlargement and if it's even worth it. This has been spurred on because some influencer believes it's a good idea to be spreading hearsay and speculation about what actually happens with penis enlargement, saying that if you nuke your penis with dihydrotestosterone, it will grow. This video is to show why he's an idiot. Because of the nature of this video, there's a good chance it will be demonetized. So if you want to help me out, other than just ad revenue, like and subscribe as it helps my channel and I can reach a bigger audience. Also, if you're looking for a more proven way of penis enlargement, check out my books in the description below. Essentially, it is everything I know about penis enlargement from a scientific standpoint. I looked at physiotherapy research to make a relatively scientifically sound routine, at least as you can without directly studying the penis tissue. But since it's all made of the same stuff, it is probably the most accurate that we can get at this current time. So check it out in the description below if you're interested or struggling to follow along with the YouTube and Reddit. Right, let's start off with good old testosterone. Now, the common misconception is that testosterone is what causes you to become a man. That's kind of incorrect. What actually happens is the conversion of DHT to dihydrotestosterone. This is what's going to cause facial hair and the changes in your penis during puberty. Testosterone is mainly for muscle building. It's the anabolic agent, while the dihydrotestosterone that is derived from it is what's going to give you male sex characteristics. So when we take testosterone, we are only going to see about 10% of the effects of dihydrotestosterone because it converts at about 7 to 10% depending on the individual. So if you produce, I'm just going to talk in milligrams because it's much easier for people to understand that aren't familiar with like nanograms a deciliter, for example. So if we only produce 70 milligrams of testosterone a week on average, we're only going to produce 5 to 7 grams of dihydrotestosterone in it. Dihydrotestosterone is tissue selective. There's going to be specific regions of the body that are going to have high density for androgen receptors. One of those is actually going to be your hairline. The keratinization is caused by dihydrotestosterone. Same thing for facial hair and body hair. All of those are going to have some androgen receptor in them, and then your penis is going to be loaded with them because that's what makes you have an adult penis during puberty. The binding of dihydrotestosterone to the androgen receptors in the penis. There's 2 or 3 main thought processes of what causes dihydrotestosterone to stop causing penile growth as you grow. First one is receptor burnout. Much like your hair follicles, once you've received too much dihydrotestosterone to a follicle, it burns out, basically saying, I am no longer going to communicate with dihydrotestosterone. And that's what causes male pattern baldness. In the penis, it's possible to assume that once it receives so much dihydrotestosterone signaling, it will burn out that receptor. But most research suggests that with just applying DHT alone, so a DHT cream to the penis, it is enough to keep sexual function roughly the same as it was before. So when we apply a androgenic agent, it actually signals the stop of the production of testosterone and all the other stuff because it cuts into the feedback loop. There's a research study that shows that after 24 months of using this dihydrotestosterone cream, it was enough to keep the penile tissue working. So there is evidence that the receptors of the penis are still working. They are just very downregulated compared to what they were during puberty. There's also the possibility that there are 2 different types of receptors in the penile tissue for dihydrotestosterone. One is solely for pubescent growth, and then there's going to be another pathway for maintenance. That pubescent growth pathway could burn out, and that's what's actually going to cause the stop of growing. Meanwhile, the maintenance is still controlled by dihydrotestosterone. And then there is potentially genetic limits in the penile tissue. So there's going to be like a little stopper in your genetic code that says we're only going to produce this much penile tissue. Once we hit that limit, based on how many proteins we fold and how many times it's read, for example, it will stop producing penile tissue, at least in the traditional sense. But as I already said before, it is more likely that it's just one receptor in the penile tissue that signals both the growth and the maintenance. It's just how sensitive that receptor is to dihydrotestosterone. Now, hypogonadal men that take testosterone replacement therapy sometimes report an increase in size in their penis tissue. This is more likely to be from erection quality improvement, since now they have adequate DHT to maintain the penile tissue, along with higher red blood cell count from adequate testosterone production. But in a certain case of individuals that had a stunted puberty, they can actually see significant growth from testosterone at a normal male dose, around 150 milligrams a week. Half of that is going to be not testosterone, but rather the ester that carries the testosterone in. So when we actually are talking about dosing testosterone, we have 150 milligrams of, say, testosterone ethanate. 75 of that is going to be ethanate that binds to the testosterone. That makes it like a slow burn rather than having to inject it every 4 hours. If you're a normally developed man, taking testosterone replacement therapy will not cause your penis to grow. It might increase erection quality. That is a very common benefit of testosterone replacement therapy, but it will not actually cause new penile tissue growth unless you are a stunted individual. Now, does abusing testosterone cause growth? No. Okay, but let's talk about this to explain why, and it's just a simple thought experiment. If we're just talking about this from a TRT perspective, the average dose of testosterone is about 150 milligrams depending on your own needs. Let's assume that the DHT receptors in the penis come down to only 10% of its original sensitivity. If all things are being equal, for DHT conversion and sensitivity to be roughly the same as it was during puberty, a man would have to take 1,500 milligrams of testosterone a week to have even the potential of seeing any form of tissue growth without any penis enlargement practices such as extenders or pumping. Again, this is weekly. That is 10 times the average dose. A typical TRT individual will be taking about half a milliliter of testosterone. We are talking about 5 milliliters in an injection site at one time. So normally you'd have to cycle injection sites to produce that much volume. This is more than most bodybuilders take of testosterone. Like, serious bodybuilders will not be taking this much testosterone. And there's a good chance that even though you're taking 1,500 milligrams of testosterone a week, you're not going to be having 150 milligrams of DHT conversion a week, because at a certain point, that testosterone is actually going to be offset by estrogen conversion instead. So you're going to actually see more negative benefits from estrogen, high estrogen levels, rather than DHT production. Your fat cells are going to produce more aromatase than you're going to produce 17-alpha reductase, which is what causes dihydrotestosterone. Aromatase is what's going to be causing your estrogen. So on paper, you're actually not going to be even seeing the same amount of dihydrotestosterone if it was even clean, right? Because you're going to just have more fat cells than you do 17-alpha reductase conversion, and they're going to get more of the testosterone. Therefore, you're going to have more estrogen production rather than dihydrotestosterone production, which is not good for penis enlargement, at least what we're talking about here. Now, what about just taking DHT? Because I've already said that was an option. Androgen 2.5% is a very common treatment for men suffering from microphallus. So let's say a individual does not see any changes in their penis size by the time they're 16, 17, 18. A endocrinologist might prescribe them dihydrotestosterone if the other hormones coming from their brain are correct. It's more likely that they have an issue converting stuff into dihydrotestosterone rather than the production of testosterone as a whole. So per 1 milliliter of Androgen cream, 2.5%. 2.5 grams of DHT is available, but since we're trying to pass it through the skin, roughly only 10% of that cream is going to make it into the system. A normal man produces about 7 to 10 grams of DHT a week, meaning that 1 to 2 applications a day would be enough for most men to replace their dihydrotestosterone testosterone with Androgens. Now, assuming that a man downregulates to about 10% of its original sensitivity, again, this is just speculation, he would need a solution of over 25% to even have a chance. And that's just like practical 1 to 2 times a day of this said application. The thing is that DHT crystallizes in solutions beyond 10%. So you would actually have a block of dihydrotestosterone of a bunch of impurities before you'd actually be able to produce 25% DHT cream. I cannot stress this enough. The growth from dihydrotestosterone has only been tested in prepubescent men, meaning that they had a condition that made them very sensitive to dihydrotestosterone. The idea that I'm sharing with you is one, extremely impractical, one, just for the total injection volume of testosterone is insanely high and has many side effects associated with it that I'll talk about in a second. And the DHT would be very hard to source without a doctor's prescription, and you would not be able to get that much DHT on a prescription. So let's just go over the side effects for due diligence. Let's say you are taking 1500 milligrams of testosterone. We're going to see high blood pressure, estrogenic bloat, so you'll have a lot of midsection bloat. You're going to have high cholesterol because you're literally injecting an oil into your bloodstream. Then you're going to have a bunch of acne because one, it signals your cells to excrete more oils, and you're literally having high oil volume in your body, so it has to be excreted some way. And then we're going to have some gyno. So, man boobs will be from the extreme conversion of estrogen to testosterone. Yes, you can do aromatase inhibitors with it to mitigate those risks, but then you're opening up for other side effects down the line. Now, for DHT specifically, you'll be getting these side effects as well on testosterone, but hair loss for one, since it's going to bind to the receptors in your hair. Creaky joints because it antagonizes estrogen. Estrogen is one of the main reasons why we have healthy joints and soft tissues. Enlarged prostate. There's a very sensitive organ in our male reproductive system called the prostate. Basically, it helps produce a bunch of fluids needed for seminal volume. You do not want an enlarged prostate, increases your risk for cancer there, and it makes it harder to urinate. Then increase in body hair is one of the other things. And then you could also be seeing changes in mood associated with dihydrotestosterone, though that's probably a bit overstated. It will vary individual to individual how much it changes your mood. And again, this is me assuming that growth and maintenance is done on the same pathway. If that is a secondary pathway, there is no chance of this working. Just bottom line, there is no chance that taking that amount of androgens will cause penis enlargement just because your body will not allow it. So it's not worth the risk on that front. In short, high testosterone will not do anything for PE, and if anything, it will actually limit the growth of penis tissue through traditional methods like hanging, extending, and pumping, because it signals nutrients to go to the muscles first rather than the soft tissues. So that's why a lot of individuals that bodybuild have a bunch of joint issues, is because their muscles are super greedy when it comes to all these proteins. So we're already talking about passive diffusion into the tissue for nutrient uptake. Then we're telling the body to send less proteins to the afflicted area. So we're going to see a bunch of issues with soft tissue healing over time. Now, what about HCG, as this is another relatively common prescription for men suffering from hypogonadism? Human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG, as I'm going to say it because I probably actually said it wrong right then and there, is an analog for luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is one of the signals from your pituitary that makes its way down to the testes, and that's what's going to signal the production of testosterone. It is one of the first hormones responsible for the production of testosterone, because it's a big circle. It'll be at like step 1 or step 2 on the circle. Testosterone is going to be like step 4. Estrogen and DHT are going to be step 5 and 6, if we want to talk about it in this conversion circle. So some men are going to have issues with their pituitary producing luteinizing hormone. So this is going to replace that hormone, and then their testes will function normally and then actually develop normally if they have a stunted puberty. There is a lot of research showing that to be the case. Now the key word is stunted, much like dihydrotestosterone. It's just a different form of limiting factor. And since we are only replacing the signaling hormone of testosterone production, the best we can do is your natural to high natural levels of testosterone production. So let's say you're at 300 nanograms a deciliter of testosterone to be beforehand. You can get up to 600 to 700, maybe even 800 when you start supplementing HCG, but expecting to go above 1,000 to even 1,200, very unlikely, just because it is still going to stay in your natural production range. And again, guys, I cannot stress this enough. It will not do anything to a naturally fully developed man. There are still benefits that might be worth it for you to take HCG. HCG is actually a pretty safe compound in general if you do not overdose it. One of the main reasons why it's so hard to get right now is that it became a dieting drug. It kind of signals your brain to not be ghrelin sensitive. So that means you won't get as hungry as often. And a lot of places started to prescribe a crap ton of it, like 4 to 5 times what the original prescription strength was to get these dietary benefits. It was called the HCG diet. Not worth it. And now it makes it harder for people with fertility issues to see the treatment that they need. All right, what about other steroids? Now, this is what could get me in trouble on YouTube if you guys heard about what happened to Mark Bell. So I'm not going to go into crazy specifics here. But in short, steroids were designed to be less androgenic than testosterone and dihydrotestosterone because they were designed to help with muscle wasting conditions. So let's say you're a cancer patient, they are trying to limit the amount of muscle mass you lose. Or let's say you're an HIV patient. They are just trying to keep your muscle mass normal so you have a better chance of a normal life during treatment. Now we're getting to the point with SARMs, which are just next generation steroids. Anyone that tells you that SARMs are not steroids is full of themselves. However, they are interesting, and they probably deserve a bit more of a discussion later outside of penis enlargement. But SARMs in general are super tissue selective. That's what they were designed to do. But the best way to think of them is as next generation steroids. Now, the way we rate anabolic androgenic steroids is with the androgen to anabolic ratio. You can sometimes flip it. It really depends on who's making the chart. But testosterone is going to be 100 anabolic to 100 androgenic. So that means you're getting the full effects of testosterone. That is our baseline. Most non-DHT derived steroids, meaning that they did not alter a DHT molecule to make this steroid, will have a androgen affinity less than half of testosterone. So it will have a much higher anabolic to a much lower androgenic ratio compared to testosterone. Even some DHT steroids are going to be half as androgenic as testosterone. And then there's SARMs like RAD 140 that are 90 to 1 anabolic to androgenic, meaning that it is like 3 to 5% of the androgenic activity of testosterone on paper, at least. Steroids are about half as strong of androgens as testosterone is. We're going to need to 20x that. So we're going to need to be taking 3,000 milligrams of whatever steroid to cause a similar androgenic response, even if it does bind to penile tissue, if at all. That's another thing, is since it's tissue selective, there's a chance it won't bind to that tissue specifically, and that's what the research on SARMs is for. And I can't tell you enough how much 3,000 milligrams is without showing you, but again, if the original injection volume is about half a milliliter, if we 20 times X that, we're talking 10 milliliters of oil into our system a day, if we're doing injections, that is. Oh my God, that is a lot. Okay, like I can't stress to you how much that is. And then there's the argument that certain hormones are going to be more tissue selective than others, which is correct. That's what they're designed for. But one of the more popular ones is boldenone. That is something they use with horses. It goes by Equipoise for its like main street name. People assume, since horses have huge cocks, that if they take boldenone, that they will also develop a larger penis. That's not what is happening, guys. Okay, correlation does not cause causation. So if we want to look at this real quick, boldenone converts to dihydroboldenone, and then there could be some novel metabolites in dihydroboldenone that is more sensitive to penile tissue. There is no evidence of this whatsoever on like medical records, and there is very little evidence on forums that boldenone injections or dihydroboldenone injections cause any growth to penile tissue whatsoever. So be safe. Don't take steroids for penis enlargement. Hopefully this laid out to you how impractical this is, but you also have to remember, particularly here in the United States, owning and using steroids is illegal. That should be another deterrent. Secondly, if it did work, the men that were taking this much testosterone would have saw the effect and would have probably bragged about it by now online. So if it did work, we would know about it. Same with dihydrotestosterone. People have been trying it for at least 3 to 5 years on the subreddit and other subreddits. I've only seen 3 to 4 proven cases of it working, and then I've only seen 1 to 2 cases of it actually working long term. So we can't even be certain that the anecdotal evidence is accurate, saying it goes beyond erection quality improvements. And we also don't know, since most of these individuals are doing penis enlargement with taking of dihydrotestosterone, that the dihydrotestosterone was fully responsible for that growth or even aided in that growth. So save your hair, save your prostate. Do not take dihydrotestosterone because some random floating head on YouTube is telling you to take it. Really do the research, and you'll see that most of the research shows that it only works in a very specific subset of individuals that are unhealthy. Like many drugs, they are just to be used on unhealthy individuals. That being said, do your own research if you really don't believe me, okay? I'm just trying to keep you guys safe. So let me know in the comments if there's something you want me to cover debunking. I do want to talk about growth hormone and other stuff like that because, again, that is a very misguided topic once you actually know what's happening in the body. So that will be coming up in the next couple weeks. But let me know what else you want me to talk about with PE myths. That's going to be the first of an ongoing series. So let me know. Again, like and subscribe. You can get vigor and virility and vitality on Leviathan Subs and Amazon.com. That stuff was actually formulated to help with penis enlargement a bit. And then you can get devices at peakmalphysique.com that are pretty affordable. That was the main point of our joint venture there. So I hope to see you again.